Rain hammers against the windshield of a beat-up Ford F-150, each drop a small explosion in the silence. I'm sitting here in the parking lot of Columbia University, watching my son through the blur of rain and tears. My hands, calloused, scarred, permanently stained with grease no amount of scrubbing can remove, grip the steering wheel like it's the only thing keeping me from falling apart. There's still a fresh burn on my left thumb from last night's shift. The metal was hotter than I'd calculated, and I'd rushed the weld because I was thinking about today, about this moment, about seeing Dylan walk across that stage in his cap and gown. 20 years. 20 goddamn years I spent behind that welding mask, breathing in fumes that probably took a decade off my life, feeling sparks bite into my skin through worn gloves, just so my boy wouldn't have to know what it feels like when your body gives out at the end of a 16-hour shift. I thought my scars were his bridge to something better. I was wrong. Through the rain-soaked window, I watch him. Dylan Mitchell, my baby boy, now 22 and wearing a smile I don't recognize. He's got his arms wrapped around Richard Blackwell, that son of a bitch in the $3,000 Armani suit who swooped into our lives 4 years ago and decided my kid needed polishing. The ceremony just ended. I'd stood in the back, way in the back, in my $80 Walmart dress while everyone else wore designer everything. Security had almost turned me away at the door. "Ma'am, are you sure you're on the guest list?" "I'm Dylan Mitchell's mother." The way that kid looked at me, like he was trying to figure out what the hell a woman like me was doing at a place like this, should have been my first clue about how this day would go. But I'd stayed. I'd watched. And I'd waited for Dylan to mention me. Just once. That's all I wanted. Just one acknowledgement that the woman who'd given up everything, who'd gone into debt so deep I'll be paying it off until I'm 67, was standing there, proud as hell of what he'd accomplished. Instead, I got this. I want to thank Richard Blackwell, the man who showed me what true success looks like. Without him, I wouldn't be the man I am today. Richard, not me. The man who'd known Dylan for 4 years gets the credit. The mother who'd known him for 22 gets erased. I'd felt something crack inside my chest when those words left his mouth. Not a clean break, more like metal fatigue. The kind of failure that happens when you stress something beyond its limits for too long. Now I'm watching Dylan laugh at something Richard says. Watching him shake hands with people who look at me like I'm the help when I walk past. Watching him become someone I don't recognize. My phone buzzes. It's Linda, my shift partner from the plant. Linda. "Girl, you okay? How's the ceremony?" I stare at the screen. My thumbs hover over the keyboard. How do you tell someone that your son just publicly disowned you in front of 200 people? That he looked straight through you when you tried to catch his eye? That he introduced you to his girlfriend as Sarah instead of my mom? Me. It's fine. Talk later. I set the phone down and look at my hands again. These hands that built his future. These hands he's ashamed of. There's a knock on my window. I jump, expecting security to tell me to move my piece of shit truck away from the nice cars. Instead, it's an older black woman in a Columbia staff uniform holding an umbrella. "Ma'am, you've been sitting here for 20 minutes. You all right?" I roll down the window halfway. "Yeah, I'm good." She doesn't look convinced. "You Dylan Mitchell's mama?" My breath catches. "How did you—" "Baby, I work in the registrar's office. I know who pays the bills." She gives me a knowing look. "And I know who doesn't get thanked." I can't hold it together anymore. The tears come, hot and fast. "He didn't even mention me," I whisper. Not once. The woman, her name tag says Gloria, reaches through the window and squeezes my shoulder. "Some children don't learn to appreciate sacrifice until they've made their own. Your boy will learn. Question is, will you be there when he does?" She walks away before I can respond, leaving me with that question hanging in the air like smoke. Will I be there when he learns? I turn the key in the ignition. The truck sputters. It always does, before catching. As I pull out of the parking lot, I catch one more glimpse of Dylan in my rearview mirror. He's smiling, celebrating, living his best life. And I'm driving away in the rain, just another ghost in his success story. The thing about being a welder is that people think it's just about joining metal. It's not. It's about precision. It's about knowing that one weak joint can bring down an entire structure. It's about understanding that the heat you feel today will leave marks tomorrow. I learned that lesson at 27 when my husband Jake walked out. Dylan was 2. We'd been married for 4 years, and I'd thought we were solid. Turns out our marriage had a weak joint I'd never bothered to inspect. Her name was Melissa, and she was Jake's secretary at the accounting firm where he worked. "I need something different, Sarah," he'd said, standing in our kitchen with his bags already packed. "Someone who understands my ambitions." "What about your son?" I'd asked, holding a toddler Dylan on my hip. "I'll send money." He didn't. Not after the first 3 months, anyway. Then the checks just stopped. Last I heard, he was living in Florida with Melissa and their 2 kids. Dylan's half-siblings that he's never met. So there I was, 27 years old, high school diploma, no college degree, and a 2-year-old who needed to eat. I'd learned welding at 18 from my dad before he died. He used to say, "Sarah girl, a trade is something nobody can take from you. Not a husband, not the economy, not bad luck. Long as there's metal in the world, there's work for a welder." He was right. I got hired at Miller Industrial Plant 3 weeks after Jake left. Starting pay was $18 an hour. Good money in 2004, especially for someone like me. But 18 an hour doesn't go far when you're paying rent, daycare, utilities, and trying to save for your kid's future. So I started picking up the double shifts. 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. I'd go home during that 4-hour break, sleep for 2 hours, shower for 20 minutes, check on Dylan with the neighbor who watched him, then head back. The money was better on night shift, $27 an hour, but the toll it took was brutal. You ever try to sleep during the day when your body's screaming at you that something's wrong? When every noise sounds like your kid crying? But I did it. For 6 years, I did it. Dylan's childhood is a blur of me in work clothes, smelling like burnt metal and desperation. I remember when he was 8. It was summer, and all his friends were going to Disneyland. He came home from his buddy Tyler's house, and I could see it written all over his face before he even asked. "Mom, can we go to Disneyland?" I was sitting at our tiny kitchen table, calculator out, bills spread everywhere. I'd just gotten hit with a $400 car repair that I hadn't budgeted for. "Baby, not this year." "But Tyler's going, and Marcus—" He caught himself. Marcus's dad was a lawyer. Marcus got to go to Disneyland every year. "I know, sweetie. But Mommy's got to save money for important things." "Like what?" "Like college," I'd said, pulling him onto my lap even though he was getting too big for it. "So you can be whatever you want when you grow up." He'd nodded, but I saw the disappointment. Hell, I felt it. What kind of mother can't even take her kid to Disneyland? The kind who's choosing between Disneyland and his future, that's who. When Dylan turned 12, he wanted to play soccer. Club soccer, not the rec league stuff. The fancy kind where college scouts show up. $300 a season. Uniforms, travel costs, tournament fees. It all added up to close to $1,000 a year. I picked up Sunday shifts. The plant usually ran skeleton crew on Sundays, but they'd pay time and a half for anyone willing to work it. $40 an hour. I did it for 3 years straight. Never missed a payment. Never missed one of his games either, even though I'd show up straight from the plant in my work clothes, probably looking like hell and smelling worse. Dylan scored the winning goal in the regional championship when he was 14. I screamed so loud I nearly lost my voice. He ran off the field and hugged me, not caring that I was covered in grime. "Thanks for letting me play, Mom. I know it's expensive." God, my heart nearly burst. If only he'd held on to that gratitude. The truck, that goddamn Ford F-150, was my dad's. He left it to me when he died. By the time Dylan was in high school, it had 287,000 miles on it and was held together by duct tape and prayers. But I knew how to fix it myself. Couldn't afford a mechanic, so I learned. Replaced the alternator in a parking lot once. Changed the transmission fluid in our driveway. Dylan would help me sometimes, handing me tools, asking questions. "Why don't we just get a new truck, Mom?" "Because new trucks cost money we're saving for your future, baby." But this one's embarrassing. That word, embarrassing. He was 15 when he first said it. That's when I should have known. I never told Dylan about the shoulder injury. It happened during his sophomore year of high school. I was working on a vertical weld, awkward angle, heavy piece, and something in my shoulder just gave. Rotator cuff tear, the ER doctor said. Recommended surgery, physical therapy, 6 weeks off work. "Can't do that," I told him. "Ma'am, if you keep working on this, you're going to cause permanent damage." "Then I'll cause permanent damage." They gave me a cortisone shot and a prescription for pain pills that I never filled because they cost $60 and I didn't have it. I worked through the pain for 2 years. Still do, actually. My left shoulder clicks every time I lift my arm above my head. Some mornings I can't even put on a shirt without wincing. But Dylan got his club soccer. Dylan got his SAT prep classes. Dylan got everything he needed. That's what mothers do, right? We break so our kids don't have to. I didn't go to the dentist for 5 years. By the time Dylan was a junior in high school, I had 2 cavities that had turned into root canals. The pain was excruciating. I'd chew on the right side of my mouth only, avoid anything too hot or cold, and pray it didn't get infected. Linda noticed. We were on break one night, and I'd winced while drinking coffee. "Sarah, when's the last time you saw a dentist?" "Don't remember." "Girl, that's not okay. Neither is dental work without insurance." She'd looked at me like I was crazy. "Miller has dental insurance." "Yeah, and it costs $150 a month. That's $150 I'm putting toward Dylan's college fund." Linda didn't say anything after that. What could she say? My diet consisted of ramen, canned soup, and whatever sandwiches I could throw together. $3 a day, max. Meanwhile, Dylan ate real food. Chicken, vegetables, fruit. I'd make him a proper dinner every night. Well, Linda would, since I was working doubles, and he'd eat like a normal teenager should. I survived on coffee and spite. 47 years old now, and I've got the body of someone 60. My knees hurt. My back hurts. My hands are permanently stiff. I've got scars on my arms that'll never fade. Burn marks that turned into keloids because I couldn't afford the scar treatment cream. But Dylan was going to college. Ivy League college. That's what mattered. That's what I told myself every single day for 20 years. Richard Blackwell walked into our lives the summer before Dylan's junior year of high school. I say our lives, but really, he walked into Dylan's life. I was just collateral damage. Dylan had gotten a part-time job at Westfield Country Club, bussing tables, fetching golf clubs, the usual rich people servant stuff. The pay was decent for a 16-year-old, $12 an hour plus tips, and Dylan liked it because he got to see how the other half lives. Those were his exact words. "Mom, you should see these people. They don't worry about money. They just live." Should have been my first red flag. Richard was one of the VIP members. CEO of some investment firm in Manhattan, belonged to half a dozen clubs, drove a different luxury car every week. The kind of guy who tips $100 on a $50 tab just because he can. Dylan caught his attention one day when he mentioned he was taking AP Economics. "Smart kid," Richard had apparently said. "Most guys your age don't think about economics until they're in debt from it." They started talking. At first, it was just casual conversation. Dylan would bring Richard his drinks. They'd chat about the stock market, about business, about ambition. Then Richard started inviting Dylan to sit during his breaks, started giving him books to read. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Think and Grow Rich. All that prosperity gospel bullshit. Dylan ate it up. "Mom, Richard says the key to wealth is leverage. You use other people's money to build your empire." "That sounds like debt with extra steps, baby." "No, it's different. It's strategic." I should have shut that shit down right there. But I genuinely thought, this was good for Dylan. Having a male mentor, someone successful to look up to. God knows his own father wasn't around to teach him anything. By Dylan's senior year, Richard was basically his fairy godfather. He started taking Dylan to business seminars, networking events, places I couldn't afford to send him and wouldn't have known existed if I tried. Then came Dylan's 17th birthday. I'd planned a small party at our house. Invited his friends from school, made a cake from scratch, chocolate with vanilla frosting, Dylan's favorite since he was 6. I'd even sprung for the fancy candles, the ones that relight themselves as a joke. The party was set for 6 p.m. I'd gotten off my shift early, lost out on 4 hours of pay, but it was Dylan's birthday. Worth it. 5:30 rolls around. Dylan's upstairs getting ready. His friends start showing up. Everything's perfect. Then I hear a car horn outside. Not just any horn, one of those expensive, subtle ones that still somehow sounds rich. I look out the window, and there's a brand new BMW 3 Series sitting in our driveway. Black, shiny. Probably cost more than I'd make in 2 years. Richard steps out, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dylan comes flying down the stairs. "Is that—" "Happy birthday, kid." Richard tosses him the keys. I'm standing there with my homemade cake, watching my son's face light up like Christmas morning. He's not looking at me. He's not looking at the party I'd planned. He's looking at that car like it's the answer to every prayer he's ever had. "Richard, this is too much," I start to say. "Nonsense. The kid deserves it. He's got potential. I'm just investing in his future." Richard finally looks at me, and there's something in his eyes I can't quite read. Pity, maybe. Or superiority. "Sarah, you've done your best. Now let me show him what's next." Dylan gives me a quick hug, distracted, already itching to get in that car, and says, "Thanks for the party, Mom, but can we do the cake later? I want to take this for a drive." "But your friends are—" He's already out the door. I stand there in my kitchen holding a cake with 17 candles that haven't been blown out, while Dylan's friends awkwardly shuffle out to check out the new car. Linda's daughter, who'd been invited, stays behind. "Ms. Sarah, that cake looks really good." Bless that girl. We ended up eating the whole damn thing together while sitting on the porch, watching Dylan show off his BMW to the neighborhood. The candles melted down to nothing. After that, things changed fast. Dylan started spending more time with Richard, less time at home. He'd come back from their business meetings, talking about portfolios and venture capital and networking strategies. "Richard says I need to upgrade my image if I want to be taken seriously." "Your image is fine, baby." "Mom, I can't show up to Columbia in jeans and t-shirts. I need to look the part." Richard bought him a whole new wardrobe, suits, designer shoes, a watch that probably cost $5,000. Investment in his personal brand, Richard called it. I called it something else, but I kept my mouth shut. The first time Dylan expressed real shame about me was a month before he left for Columbia. We were at a school event, some award ceremony where Dylan was getting recognized for his academics. I'd taken off work, more lost pay, put on my nicest clothes, which still looked like shit compared to the other parents, and showed up proud as hell. Dylan saw me in the parking lot, and his whole face changed. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "It's your award ceremony. Of course I'm here." "But I told you it wasn't a big deal." "Dylan, you're getting an Academic Excellence Award. That's a huge deal." He looked around nervously, like he was checking to see if anyone had noticed us together. "Okay, but can you park somewhere else? My friends are going to see the truck." Something twisted in my gut. "What's wrong with the truck?" "Nothing, just—" "It's embarrassing, okay?" There was that word again. "I'm your mother. I've driven this truck to every soccer game, every school event, And I appreciate that, Mom. I do. But things are different now. I'm going to Columbia. I need to start thinking about my image." "Your image." "Yeah, Richard explained it to me. First impressions matter. Perception matters. If people see me getting out of that truck, they'll make assumptions about who I am." "And who are you, Dylan?" He didn't answer, just walked away and left me standing in that parking lot, keys in hand, feeling like I'd just been gut-punched. I didn't move the truck. I sat through that entire ceremony in the back row, watching my son accept his award, watching him shake hands with the principal, watching him smile and laugh with his friends. Not once did he look back to find me in the crowd. A week before Dylan left for Columbia, I took him out to dinner, or tried to. "How about Olive Garden, your favorite?" "Mom, can we go somewhere else?" "What's wrong with Olive Garden?" "Nothing, it's just, chain restaurants." Richard says successful people don't eat at chains. Well, successful people can afford not to. "We're going to Olive Garden." We went, but Dylan spent the entire meal looking uncomfortable, checking his phone, barely eating his food. "You used to love their breadsticks," I said. "I still do. It's just different now." "What's different?" He put his phone down and looked at me. Really looked at me, for the first time in months. And in his eyes, I saw something that broke my heart. Pity. My own son pitied me. "Mom, you don't understand. I'm about to be at Columbia. I'm going to be around people who summer in the Hamptons, who have vacation homes, who don't worry about money. I need to fit in with them." "By pretending you didn't come from here?" "By not advertising where I came from." I should have said something. Should have told him that where you come from is just as important as where you're going. That there's no shame in honest work. That the people who matter won't care about your background. But I didn't. Because part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, thought he'd figure it out on his own. Thought college would teach him what I couldn't. I was wrong about that too. Columbia University costs $65,000 a year. That's tuition, room, board, fees, books, everything. 4 years comes out to $260,000. I had $87,000 in savings. I'd been saving since Dylan was 2 years old. Every spare dollar, every overtime shift, every tax refund, it all went into that account. 20 years of sacrifice, sitting in a bank account with a pathetic 2% interest rate. 87,000. I was so proud of that number. It wasn't enough, not even close. I didn't tell Dylan about the money situation. Not at first. When his acceptance letter came from Columbia, he'd been so happy, jumping around the living room, calling all his friends, texting Richard the good news. It was the first time in months I'd seen him genuinely excited about something that didn't involve designer clothes or luxury cars. "Mom, I got in! I got into Columbia!" I'd hugged him tight, breathed in the smell of his hair like I used to when he was little. "I'm so proud of you, baby. I can't believe it. I'm really going to New York. You deserve it. You worked your ass off for this." And he had. 4 years of straight A's, captain of the soccer team, volunteer work, leadership positions. My boy had earned that acceptance letter. Then he'd pulled back, suddenly serious. "Mom, about the money." "Don't worry about the money. I've got it handled." "You sure?" Because Richard offered to. "No." The word came out sharper than I'd intended. "This is my responsibility. I'm your mother. I'll handle it." Dylan had looked relieved. "Thanks, Mom. I promise I'll make you proud." "You already do, baby." That night, after Dylan went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with my calculator, a bottle of cheap whiskey, and a notepad. Total needed: $260,000. Savings: $87,000. Shortfall: $173,000. I stared at those numbers until they blurred. How the hell was I supposed to come up with $173,000? I called the financial aid office the next morning. They were polite but firm. Dylan didn't qualify for need-based aid because I made too much money. $45,000 a year was apparently too much for help, but not enough to actually pay for college. Scholarships? Dylan had applied for dozens. He got a few small ones, 500 here, 1,000 there, but nothing that made a real dent. Student loans? Dylan could take out about $30,000 in federal loans over 4 years. That still left $143,000. I looked into Parent Plus loans. The interest rates made me nauseous, 7.5%, but I didn't have a choice. No, wait, I did have one more option. The house, my dad's house, the one I'd inherited when he died, the one I'd been paying the mortgage on for 15 years. I called the bank. "I need to know about home equity loans." "How much equity do you have in the property, Ms. Mitchell?" "I owe $42,000 on a house worth about $200,000, so about $158,000 in equity. We can lend you up to 80% of that. So roughly $125,000. $125,000. That plus my savings would cover most of it. I'd still need to take out smaller loans for the rest, but it was doable. What's the interest rate?" "Current rate is 6.2% for a home equity loan, 15-year term." I did the math in my head. That was going to be brutal. But Dylan needed to go to Columbia. Okay, let's do it. The loan officer's name was Brian, mid-30s, wearing a cheap suit, the kind of guy who probably spent his days crushing people's dreams with financial reality. He walked me through the paperwork, his voice professionally neutral. "You understand that if you default on this loan, the bank can foreclose on your home?" "I understand." "And you'll be paying approximately $900 a month for the next 15 years. "I understand." "Ms. Mitchell, with all due respect, are you sure this is wise? That's a lot of debt to take on for my son's education?" I looked him dead in the eye. There's nothing wiser I could do with my life. He didn't argue after that, just slid the papers across his desk. I signed, page after page after page. My hand was shaking by the end. "You're a good mother," Brian said quietly as I handed back the pen. "We'll see," I said. But the home equity loan wasn't enough. Even with the $125,000 from the house and my $87,000 in savings, I was still short $50,000. I went to 3 different banks, took out personal loans at whatever rates they'd give me. First loan, $25,000 at 9.5% interest. Second loan, $15,000 at 11% interest. Credit union, $10,000 at 8% interest. Total debt, $173,000. I'd be paying it off until I was 67 years old, if I lived that long. Given the state of my body, that was a big if. The night before I wired the first tuition payment, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the numbers, about what I'd just done, about the fact that I'd bet my entire future, my home, my retirement, everything, on Dylan's education. Was it worth it? I looked at the photos on my wall, Dylan's school pictures, year by year, that little gap-toothed smile from first grade, the awkward middle school years, the confident senior portrait. Yeah, it was worth it. I never told Dylan the truth. When he asked about the money, I just said, "Don't worry, I've been saving your whole life. We're good." He believed me. Why wouldn't he? I'd been telling him since he was a kid that I was saving for his college. He had no idea that saving actually meant mortgaging every asset I have and going into debt that'll outlive me. Richard knew, though. We ran into each other at a coffee shop near Dylan's school, about a month before Dylan left for New York. "Sarah," he nodded at me, stirring his espresso that probably cost $6. "Richard? Dylan tells me you've got his Columbia costs covered." "That's right." He studied me with those calculating eyes. "All of it? 4 years?" "All of it." "That's impressive. How much did you have saved?" "That's personal." "Of course." He took a sip of his espresso. "You know, I looked into Columbia's costs. $65,000 a year is no joke. Even with your salary at Miller. What is it, $45,000 annually? That's a hell of a savings achievement." I didn't like where this was going. "I've been careful with money." "Or you've been creative." He leaned back. "Look, Sarah, I respect the hustle. You did what you had to do. But here's some free advice. Pride only gets you so far. I offered to invest in Dylan's education, and you turned me down. I don't need your money. No, you need the bank's money, which you're going to spend the next 20 years paying back." He stood up. "When that debt crushes you, and it will, remember that I offered to help." He walked out, leaving me sitting there with my $3 regular coffee and a growing sense of dread. 3 days before Dylan left for Columbia, I sat him down. "Baby, I need to talk to you about money." He looked nervous. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just want to make sure you understand something." I took his hands, his soft, uncalloused hands that had never known real work. "College is expensive. I'm paying for it because you're my son and you deserve this opportunity. But I need you to take it seriously." "I will, Mom. I promise." "I need you to study hard, get good grades, make connections. But most importantly," I squeezed his hands, "don't forget where you came from." "I won't. And don't forget who got you there." Something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, maybe. Or guilt. "Mom, I know you're paying for school. I'm grateful, really." "Are you?" "Of course I am. Why would you even ask that?" "Because you look at me like I embarrass you. Because you don't want me near your friends. Because you're already halfway to forgetting me." But I didn't say any of that. I just hugged him. "I'm proud of you, Dylan. No matter what." "I know, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, baby." 3 days later, I drove him to the airport. We didn't talk much during the drive. He was on his phone the whole time, texting Richard about their lunch plans in New York. At the drop-off zone, I helped him get his bags out of the truck. "You got everything?" "Yeah, I'm good." "Call me when you land?" "Sure, Mom." He gave me a quick hug, the kind you give a distant relative, not your mother, and headed toward the terminal. I watched him go, my heart somewhere around my ankles. "Dylan?" I called out. He turned back. "Make me proud, baby." He gave me a thumbs up and disappeared into the crowd. I sat in that airport parking lot for 20 minutes, crying so hard I couldn't see straight. Crying because my baby was leaving. Crying because I knew, somehow, that things would never be the same. Crying because I'd just bet my entire life on a kid who was already embarrassed by me. But that's what mothers do. We bet everything on our children, even when we know we're going to lose. Dylan called me 3 times during his first week at Columbia. By week 2, it was down to once. By October, I was lucky if I heard from him twice a month. "He's just busy, Sarah," Linda said when I mentioned it during our lunch break. "College kids get wrapped up in their new lives. It's normal." "Is it normal for him to sound annoyed every time I call?" Linda didn't have an answer for that. I kept working my doubles. Had to. Those loan payments weren't going to make themselves. $900 a month for the home equity loan, $450 for the first personal loan, $280 for the second, $170 for the credit union, $1,800 a month just in loan payments. That's on top of rent, utilities, food, gas and the $500 I still sent Dylan for spending money. "Mom, everyone here has money for going out," he'd said during one of our increasingly rare phone calls. "I can't just sit in my dorm every weekend." So I sent the money, every month, like clockwork. My shoulder got worse. The clicking turned into grinding. Some nights I'd lie in bed and feel it popping every time I moved. The pain meds from the clinic helped, but they made me foggy, and I couldn't afford to be foggy around 1,000-degree metal. I worked through it. Dylan came home for Thanksgiving his freshman year. I'd been counting down the days, planning the meal, imagining him walking through the door and hugging me like he used to. He showed up wearing clothes I didn't recognize, designer jeans, a sweater that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget, shoes that looked like they'd never touched actual pavement. "Hey, Mom." He gave me that distant hug again. "Baby, look at you. You look so good." "Thanks." Richard took me shopping, said I needed to update my wardrobe for networking events. Richard. Always Richard. We sat down for dinner, turkey, stuffing, all his favorites, and I tried to catch up. "How are your classes?" "Good. Challenging, but good." "Make any friends?" "Yeah, some guys in my business fraternity." "Business fraternity? I didn't know you joined one." "Oh yeah, Kappa Epsilon Pi. It's pretty exclusive. Dues are $2,000 a year, but the networking opportunities are insane. $2,000. He said it like it was nothing. "Dylan, I didn't budget for fraternity dues." "It's okay, Richard covered it. He said it's an investment in my future." I put down my fork. "Richard's paying for your fraternity?" "Just the first year. I'll handle it after that." "With what money?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I'll figure it out, Mom. That's what college is about, right? Learning to be independent?" Independent. While I was sending him $500 a month and drowning in debt. Sophomore year, things escalated. "Mom, I'm moving off campus." "What? Why?" "Dorms are included in tuition." "Yeah, but Richard found me this great apartment in the Upper East Side. He says living off campus will be better for my professional development." "How much is rent?" Silence. "Dylan, how much?" $3,200 a month. I nearly dropped the phone. $3,200? "Dylan, that's... Richard's covering most of it. I'll just pay utilities and stuff." "Why is Richard paying for your apartment?" "Because he believes in me, Mom. He sees my potential. He wants to invest in my success." There was that word again. Invest. Like Dylan was a stock portfolio instead of a human being. "Baby, you're taking on too much debt." "It's not debt when it's an investment. It's debt when you owe someone money, Dylan. You don't understand how this works." "Then explain it to me." He sighed, that exasperated sound that meant he thought I was being difficult. "Rich people don't use their own money, Mom. They leverage other people's resources. Richard is teaching me that. He's giving me opportunities you can't." The words hit like a punch to the throat. "Opportunities I can't give you." "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" "Mom, don't make this a thing. I'm just trying to build a future here. On someone else's dime. On strategic investments." We didn't talk for 3 weeks after that conversation. I decided to visit. Spent $200 on a bus ticket to New York, couldn't afford the plane, and showed up at Dylan's fancy apartment unannounced. The building had a doorman, an actual human whose job was to open doors for rich people. "Can I help you?" He looked me up and down, clearly skeptical. "I'm here to see Dylan Mitchell, apartment 7C. Is he expecting you?" "I'm his mother." The doorman's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Pity, maybe, or surprise. He picked up the phone. "Mr. Mitchell, there's a Sarah Mitchell here to see you." I could hear Dylan's voice through the receiver, sounding annoyed. The doorman hung up. "7th floor, ma'am." The apartment was obscene. Hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, a kitchen with appliances that probably cost more than my truck, and Dylan standing in the middle of it all, looking uncomfortable. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Wanted to surprise you, see where you're living." "You should have called first." "Would you have answered?" He didn't respond to that, just gestured vaguely at the couch. "You want something to drink?" "Water's fine." He disappeared into the kitchen while I looked around. The place was huge, had to be at least 1,500 square feet, for one college kid. Meanwhile, I was living in an 800 square foot rental. Then I noticed something. The air was cold. Really cold. Dylan, is your heat working? Yeah, why? Because it's freezing in here. I walked over to the thermostat. It was set to 60 degrees. The display was flashing an error code. Muscle memory kicked in. I'd installed enough HVAC systems to know what I was looking at. The heating element was shot. This system had been limping along for weeks, maybe months. Your heating system's broken, baby. I can fix it for you. Dylan came back with my water. What? No, it's fine. It's not fine. Trust me, I know systems. This needs repair. Richard's sending someone professional to look at it. Professional. That word landed like a slap. I am a professional, Dylan. You know what I mean, Mom. Richard has a guy who handles all the building maintenance. It's covered. I'm standing here freezing, and you're telling me to wait for Richard's guy? Just, please don't touch anything, okay? I stared at my son, at this stranger wearing my son's face. Are you embarrassed of what I do? No, of course not. Then why can't I fix your heater? Because, he looked away. Because I don't want you to. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I was gathering my bag to leave when I noticed something under the couch. A piece of paper, half hidden. Force of habit. I bent down and picked it up. It was an eviction notice. Final notice. Rent payment of $9,600, 3 months, past due. Vacate premises within 30 days or legal action will be taken. My hands started shaking. Dylan, what is this? His face went pale. It's handled. Handled? You owe almost $10,000 in rent. Richard's taking care of it. Richard's taking care of it, I repeated. So he doesn't own the apartment. You're supposed to be paying rent. The arrangement is complicated. Uncomplicate it. Dylan ran his hands through his hair, a nervous tell he'd had since childhood. Okay, fine. Richard covers most of the rent, but I'm supposed to pay $500 a month. I just fell behind. Where's the money I send you going? That's for other expenses. What expenses? He didn't answer. I looked around the apartment with new eyes, noticed the unopened bills stacked on the counter, the credit card statements. I grabbed one. The balance made me dizzy. $34,000? Dylan, what the hell did you buy? Clothes, dinners, events. Mom, everyone here has money. I can't show up to networking events looking like I'm broke. But you are broke. You're a student. I'm a student who's building a future. Richard says image is everything in business. If you don't look successful, no one will take you seriously. So you went $34,000 in debt to look successful? It's an investment. Stop calling it that, I was shouting now. Couldn't help it. You're not investing, Dylan, you're drowning, and you're dragging Richard down with you. Richard can afford it. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Mom? I wanted to grab him, shake him, make him see what he was becoming, but I couldn't find the words. The point is, I said quietly, you knew. Knew what? You knew I went into debt for your tuition. You knew I was struggling, and you didn't care. His face hardened. How do you know what I knew? Because you're smart enough to do math. Because Columbia costs $65,000 a year and I make $45,000. Because you never once asked me how I was paying for it. You said you had it handled. And you believed me because it was convenient. Because if you'd known the truth, you might have felt guilty. And guilt doesn't fit with your new lifestyle, does it? Dylan's jaw clenched. You're the one who insisted on paying. I didn't ask you to go into debt. No, you just let me. And now you're doing the same thing with Richard. It's not the same. It's exactly the same. You're using people who care about you to fund a life you can't afford. That's not fair. Know what's not fair? I was crying now. Working 16-hour days for 20 years so my son could have opportunities I never had. And then watching him become someone who thinks honest work is something to be ashamed of. I grabbed my bag. Mom, wait. I'm done, Dylan. Figure your own shit out. I slapped him. Didn't even think about it. My hand just flew up and connected with his cheek. Hard. The sound echoed in that expensive apartment. Dylan stared at me, hand on his face, eyes wide with shock. Mom, this is why you'll never understand success, I said, my voice shaking. You're too busy pretending to be something you're not. I walked out. Dylan didn't call to apologize. Neither did I. We went 4 months without speaking, the longest silence we'd ever had. I kept sending the $500 every month. Couldn't help myself. He was still my son. Linda showed me his Instagram during lunch break one day. You seen this? There was Dylan at some fancy restaurant, wearing a suit I'd never seen, watch on his wrist that gleamed even through the phone screen. On his arm, a beautiful blonde girl in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The caption, "Business dinner with the squad. Grateful for this life." Who's that girl? I asked. Linda scrolled to her profile. Sophia Vanderbilt, as in the Vanderbilts. Old money, like built the railroads in the 1800s money. I stared at the photos. Dylan at charity galas. Dylan at polo matches. Dylan on a yacht. Linda, I can't afford polo matches. I know, honey. So who's paying for all this? You know who? Richard. Always Richard. I did something I'm not proud of. I created a fake Instagram account to follow Dylan. Watched his life unfold in carefully curated squares. Watched him become someone I didn't recognize. Someone commented on one photo, "Dude, what does your family do?" Dylan's response, "Industrial businesses. Import/export mostly. Industrial businesses." That was one way to describe a welding plant. Another comment, "Your mom must be so proud." Dylan didn't respond to that one. Junior year, Dylan started posting about his internship at Richard's investment firm. Photos of him in glass offices, skyline views, corporate lunches. I knew what internships at places like that paid. Good money, really good money. So when he called, first time in months, asking for the usual $500, I asked, "Don't you have an internship?" "Yeah, but it's unpaid." "Unpaid? Richard doesn't pay his interns?" "It's about the experience, Mom. The connections." "Connections don't pay rent, Dylan." "I know, that's why I'm asking you. I can't do it anymore." Silence on the other end. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm drowning, baby. The loan payments are killing me. My shoulder's getting worse. I can barely lift my arms some days. I can't keep sending you money I don't have." "But I need it." "Then get a paying job." "Mom, everyone at Columbia has parents who support them through college. That's normal." "Well, I'm not like everyone's parents. I'm a welder who's one missed payment away from losing her house." More silence. "I didn't know it was that bad." "Yes, you did. You just didn't want to know." He hung up. I sent the money anyway. Borrowed it from Linda because I couldn't stand the thought of Dylan going without. "Sarah, you gotta stop," Linda said, handing me the cash. "He's bleeding you dry. He's my son. He's an adult making adult choices. Let him face adult consequences." But I couldn't. That's the thing about being a mother. You can't turn it off. Christmas, junior year. Dylan told me he couldn't come home. Richard invited me to Aspen. His family has a cabin there. We always spend Christmas together. Mom, I'm 21. I have my own life now. What about me? What about you? I'm alone, Dylan. You have Linda. You have your church friends. I want my son. Well, your son has other plans. He hung up before I could respond. I spent Christmas alone, ate a hungry man dinner in front of the TV, watched Home Alone and cried through the whole thing. Pastor Thompson stopped by around 8 with a plate of cookies from the church potluck. "Sarah Mitchell, why aren't you at the service?" "Didn't feel like it, Pastor." He invited himself in, took one look at my face, and sat down. "It's Dylan, isn't it?" I told him everything. The debt, the apartment, the girlfriend, the silence. All of it came pouring out like a dam breaking. Pastor Thompson listened without interrupting. When I finally finished, he leaned back and sighed. "Sarah, you know what the hardest lesson in the Bible is?" "Which one?" "Letting go. Even God had to watch his children make their own mistakes." "But I'm not God. I'm just his mother." "Exactly. You're his mother, not his savior." He squeezed my hand. "Sometimes the greatest act of love is stepping back. Let him fall. That's the only way he'll learn to stand on his own." Senior year crawled by. Dylan and I maintained a fragile peace. Weekly phone calls that lasted maybe 10 minutes, carefully avoiding any real conversation. Then came the graduation invitation. Not a personal call, not a heartfelt "Mom, I want you there." Just a formal invitation card in the mail with my name printed on it. The class of 2024 cordially invites you to the Columbia University commencement ceremony. I stared at that card for 3 days before deciding to go. "Don't do it," Linda warned. Sarah, I've got a bad feeling about this. He's my son. I have to be there. Even if he doesn't want you there? Especially if he doesn't want me there. I spent $3,000 I didn't have on this trip. New dress, hair appointment, even got my nails done. First time in 15 years. Looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Clean, polished, almost like I could pass for one of them. The illusion shattered the second I opened my mouth and my accent came through. The bus ride to New York took 8 hours. I could have flown, but I couldn't justify the extra $400. So I sat on a Greyhound, watching America scroll past my window, wondering what the hell I was doing. I checked into the cheapest motel I could find, $45 a night in Queens. The sheets were questionable, the shower barely worked, but it had a bed and a door that locked. Good enough. The graduation wasn't at Columbia's campus. The invitation had a different address. Private ceremony at Blackwell Estate, Westchester County. My stomach dropped when I Googled it. The Blackwell Estate. Richard's house. This wasn't Columbia's official graduation. This was Richard's private party. I almost didn't go. Sat in my motel room for an hour, staring at that invitation, knowing I was walking into enemy territory. But Dylan was there. My son was there. So I went. The Blackwell Estate looked like something from a movie. Actual mansion, actual gardens, actual valet parking where a kid younger than Dylan took keys to cars worth more than my house. I pulled up in my F-150. The valet's face was priceless. We can park this in the back lot, ma'am. The back lot? With the service vehicles. I handed him the keys. Sure, kid. Wouldn't want my truck embarrassing the Bentleys. Security almost didn't let me in. Name? Sarah Mitchell. The guard scrolled through his tablet. I don't see you on the list. I'm Dylan Mitchell's mother. His eyebrows went up. Dylan Mitchell has a mother? That hurt more than it should have. Last I checked, yeah, we all have mothers. He made a phone call, spoke quietly, finally stepped aside. Go ahead, ma'am. I walked into hell wearing an $80 Walmart dress. The party was already in full swing. At least 200 people, politicians, business tycoons, women in gowns that cost more than my yearly salary, men in tuxedos discussing mergers and market trends. Champagne flowed from a literal fountain, the kind I'd only seen in movies. I grabbed a glass of sparkling water and tried to blend in. Didn't work. Everyone could tell I didn't belong, could smell it on me, like cheap perfume. And what do you do? Some woman in pearls asked me. I'm a welder. Oh, she literally took a step back. That's interesting. Is your husband here? Don't have one. Oh, another step back. Well, excuse me, I see someone I need to... She disappeared into the crowd. Then I saw him. Dylan, my baby boy, wearing a custom tuxedo that probably cost $5,000. Hair styled perfectly. Smile bright and confident. On his arm, Sophia Vanderbilt, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Dylan, I waved. He saw me. His whole face changed. Went from happy to horrified in half a second. He walked over like he was approaching a car accident. Mom, you made it. I reached for a hug. He gave me that awful distant pat instead. Of course I made it. I'm so proud of you, baby. Yeah, thanks. Let me introduce you. He turned to Sophia. This is... Sarah. Sarah, not my mom, not my mother, just Sarah. Sophia extended a perfectly manicured hand. Nice to meet you. How do you know Dylan? The question hit like a freight train. I'm his mother. Sophia's smile froze. Oh, Dylan, you never mentioned... We need to greet other guests. Dylan was already pulling her away. Excuse us, Mom. And he was gone. I stood there in the middle of that party, surrounded by 200 people, completely alone. Richard took the microphone 20 minutes later. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Today we celebrate Dylan Mitchell, a young man who embodies everything we value: ambition, excellence, class. I felt sick. Dylan came from humble beginnings, but he never let that define him. He had the hunger to be more, to become someone worthy of success. Humble beginnings, like I was something to overcome. I'm proud to have mentored this young man, to have shown him what true success looks like. Dylan, come up here. Dylan bounded onto the stage, took the microphone. The crowd applauded. Thank you all for being here. This moment means everything to me. I held my breath. 4 years ago, I was just a kid with a dream. Then I met Richard Blackwell. Richard showed me a world I never knew existed. He taught me how to think like a winner, how to present myself professionally, how to become somebody. Each word was a nail in my coffin. Richard, you're the father I never had, the mentor who believed in me when no one else did. I was crying, couldn't help it. Tears running down my face, mascara probably everywhere. Without you, Richard, I'd still be stuck in that small-town mentality. You showed me I deserved more. Stuck, small town, like where he came from was a prison. To my beautiful girlfriend Sophia, thank you for showing me what a power couple looks like. And to everyone here, thank you for welcoming me into this incredible community. Standing ovation. Everyone on their feet, clapping. Dylan never mentioned me. Not once. I was the ghost in his success story. After the speech, I found him by the champagne fountain. Dylan. He turned, clearly wishing I would disappear. Mom, did you enjoy the ceremony? Why didn't you mention me? What? In your speech, you thanked Richard. You thanked Sophia. You thanked everyone except the person who actually paid for Columbia. People were starting to stare. Mom, this isn't the place. I worked 16-hour days for you. I went into debt. I mortgaged my house. I gave you everything. And I'm grateful, but that doesn't mean I have to broadcast my background to these people. Your background? I'm your mother. You're a welder, Mom. He was angry now. These people are CEOs, investors, politicians. Do you know how hard I've worked to fit in here? To make them see me as one of them? By pretending I don't exist? By becoming someone better than where I came from? The words hung in the air like poison. Better than where you came from, I repeated. So I'm something to be improved upon, something to be ashamed of. Mom, I gave you everything, and you couldn't even say my name. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You got what you wanted from me, and now I'm just an embarrassment. Dylan's face hardened. If you're going to make a scene, maybe you should leave. Something broke inside me then. Not dramatically, just a quiet final snap. Yeah, I said. Maybe I should. I walked out. Through that crowd of rich strangers. Through the grand foyer. Past the valet who looked at me with pity as he brought my beat-up truck around. It was raining. Of course it was raining. I sat in that parking lot, watching the party continue through the windows. Watching Dylan laugh and celebrate. And I realized he didn't need me anymore. Maybe he never really did. I drove home through the rain, crying so hard I had to pull over twice. 20 years. 20 years of sacrifice. And my son couldn't even say my name. I called in sick for the first time in 15 years. Couldn't do it. Couldn't put on that mask. Couldn't pick up that torch. Couldn't pretend everything was fine when my entire world had just collapsed. Linda showed up at my door around noon with soup and a bottle of cheap wine. Saw you weren't at the plant. Figured you might need this. We sat on my couch, the same ratty couch Dylan had sat on his entire childhood, and I told her everything. Every humiliating detail. That motherfucker, Linda said when I finished. I'm sorry, Sarah, but your son is a grade A asshole. He's not. Yes, he is, and you know it. That's why you're sitting here crying instead of defending him. She was right. I'd been making excuses for Dylan for years, but there was no excuse for what he'd done. He's lost, Linda. Richard's got him all twisted up. Nah, Richard didn't make Dylan an asshole. He just gave him permission to be one. Linda poured me more wine. Question is, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? You can stop being his ATM for starters. I didn't stop sending money. Couldn't. But something had shifted inside me. A door had closed. Pastor Thompson came by a few days later, found me in the garage, finally getting around to fixing my truck's transmission. Thought I'd find you under a hood somewhere. Car therapy, I said, wiping grease off my hands. Cheaper than the real thing. He chuckled. Sarah, I saw the photos online. Dylan's graduation party made the society pages. Did it now? Big spread. All about Richard Blackwell's protege. No mention of you, though. Shocking. Pastor Thompson sat on an overturned bucket watching me work. You know what I think? What's that, Pastor? I think you've been focusing on the wrong investment. I looked up. What do you mean? You spent 20 years investing in Dylan, sacrificing for Dylan, building up Dylan. He pulled out a pamphlet from his jacket. Maybe it's time to invest in people who'll actually appreciate it. The pamphlet was for the Women's Trade School Initiative, a program Linda had mentioned months ago. They're looking for donors, Pastor Thompson said. Scholarships for single mothers who want to learn trades, welding, plumbing, electrical work, real skills that lead to real jobs. Pastor, I'm broke. I can't donate. Not talking about money necessarily. They need mentors, teachers, people who've been in the trenches and survived. He met my eyes. People like you. I stared at that pamphlet, at the faces of women who looked like me 20 years ago, desperate, determined, trying to build something from nothing. Think about it, Pastor Thompson said. Sometimes God closes one door so he can open another. I couldn't stop thinking about Richard, about how he'd swooped into Dylan's life with his money and his connections, about how he'd systematically turned my son against me, about how he seemed to have unlimited resources to throw at a college kid. Something didn't add up, so I did something crazy. I hired a private investigator. His name was Tom Crawford. 50-something retired cop, ran a small PI business out of a strip mall office. His rates were reasonable, $500 for a basic background check. I had to borrow the money from Linda, again. What are you hoping to find? She asked. I don't know. Something. Anything that explains why this man has taken such an interest in my son. Tom called me 2 weeks later. Ms. Mitchell, you're going to want to sit down for this. Richard Blackwell wasn't who he claimed to be. Well, he was Richard Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Capital Investments. That part was true. But the rest? The successful bachelor mentor helping underprivileged youth? Bullshit. He's married, Tom said. 25 years. Wife's name is Jessica Blackwell. They live in a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. 3 kids, Catherine, 23, Robert, 20, and Michael, 18. My head spun. Wait, he has a whole family? Yep. And get this, Jessica thinks he's working in the city. That fancy apartment Dylan's living in, that's Richard's love nest. He tells his wife he's staying there for work during the week. So Dylan is, what, cover? Exactly. Oh, honey, I'm mentoring this underprivileged kid. That's why I need the apartment. Meanwhile, he's probably got a rotation of mistresses going through there. I felt sick. Does Dylan know? About the family? Doubt it. Richard's been careful. Keeps his 2 lives completely separate. Jesus Christ. It gets worse, Tom said. Blackwell Capital is under FBI investigation. My blood went cold. For what? Wire fraud. Money laundering. Looks like a classic Ponzi scheme. He's been using new investor money to pay returns to old investors. Total scam. They're estimating about $58 million missing from client accounts. $58 million? Yeah, and the FBI's building a case. My source says they're planning to arrest him within the next 3 months. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process it all. Ms. Mitchell, you still there? All that money he spent on Dylan, I said slowly. The apartment, the clothes, the car, that was all stolen money? Probably. Guys like Blackwell, they use other people's money to fund their lifestyle. Makes them look successful, which brings in more investors to scam. So when the FBI arrests him, everything goes. The apartment, the cars, all of it. Anyone financially tied to him is going to get dragged into the investigation. Dylan. Yeah, if your son's name is on any of Blackwell's accounts or agreements, he could be in serious trouble. I spent that night pulling every document I had. Bank statements, loan papers, the trust fund paperwork. Wait, the trust fund. Richard had invested $50,000 into Dylan's trust fund 2 years ago. I'd contributed $100,000, borrowed money, but still. The fund was supposed to be locked until Dylan turned 25. I found the documents in my file cabinet, started reading the fine print. Then I saw it. In the event of bankruptcy or legal seizure of assets, all funds contributed by Richard Blackwell and associated entities may be subject to creditor claims. I called Tom immediately, even though it was midnight. The trust fund. If Richard gets arrested, can they take it? Depends on the paperwork. Why? There's language here about creditor claims. Richard contributed $50,000. I contributed $100,000. Okay, so worst case, they take Richard's 50. Your 100 should be safe. But what if Dylan signed something? Something that gave Richard access to the whole thing? Silence on Tom's end. You think Blackwell had the kids sign over the trust fund? I don't know. But Richard's been teaching Dylan about leveraging assets and investment partnerships. What if he convinced Dylan to sign something? Shit, you might be right. Tom's voice got serious. You need to check that paperwork ASAP. If Dylan signed anything making Blackwell a co-trustee or giving him power of attorney, that whole fund could be seized. I called the bank that held the trust fund first thing Monday morning. I need to know if there have been any changes to account number 4782-9934. Let me check. Yes, there was an amendment filed 14 months ago. My heart sank. What kind of amendment? Dylan Mitchell, the primary beneficiary, added Richard Blackwell as a co-trustee with full withdrawal rights. Full withdrawal rights? Yes, ma'am. Either party can access the funds. Can I see the paperwork? I can email it to you. The document came through 5 minutes later. Dylan's signature, clear as day, on a form that basically handed Richard control of the entire trust fund. I called Dylan immediately. He actually answered. First time in weeks. Mom, I'm in class. Did you sign over your trust fund to Richard? Silence. Dylan, it's not like that. We formed an investment partnership. Richard's teaching me about portfolio management. You gave him access to $150,000. It's still my money, Mom. We're just using it strategically. Dylan, Richard is going to be arrested by the FBI. What? No, that's insane. Where did you hear that? I hired a private investigator. Richard's running a Ponzi scheme. He's stolen $58 million. When the FBI arrests him, they're going to freeze all his assets, including your trust fund. You hired a PI to investigate Richard? Mom, he's also married with 3 kids. That stopped him. What? Richard has a wife and 3 children in Connecticut. You're his cover story for why he needs that apartment. That's not true. Richard told me he's divorced. He lied, Dylan, about everything. And now you've tied your future to a criminal. I don't believe you. Then look it up yourself. Jessica Blackwell, Greenwich, Connecticut. See how long it takes you to find her. He hung up. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Couldn't afford a good one, so I went with a guy who advertised on bus benches. His name was Barry Feldman. Cheap suit, cheaper office, but he knew his stuff. Okay, so here's the situation, Barry said after reviewing the documents. The trust fund contains $150,000. You contributed $100,000. Richard contributed $50,000. Dylan signed a partnership agreement that gives Richard co-trustee status. Can we undo that? Not without Dylan's signature. He's 22, legally an adult. He'd have to revoke Richard's access himself. He won't do that. Then we got a problem. When the FBI arrests Blackwell, and it sounds like they will, they'll freeze everything with his name on it. That includes this trust fund. Even my contribution? Yep. Once the FBI gets involved, everything's frozen until they sort out what money came from where. Could take years. Years? Welcome to federal asset forfeiture. It's a nightmare. Barry leaned back. Your only option is to withdraw your contribution before the arrest. Can I do that? You're the original contributor. The amendment added Richard as co-trustee, but it didn't remove your access. So technically, yes, you can withdraw your $100,000. But you gotta move fast. Once that arrest happens, everything locks down. I withdrew the $100,000 on a Thursday morning. The bank manager tried to talk me out of it. Ms. Mitchell, are you sure? This is a substantial sum. I'm sure. It's just, this money was earmarked for your son's future. My son made his choice. I'm making mine. I walked out of that bank with a cashier's check for $100,000. 20 years of sacrifice, condensed into a single piece of paper. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes staring at that check, thinking about what to do with it. I could pay off my debts. Not all of them, but a decent chunk. Could finally get that shoulder surgery. Could maybe even take a vacation for the first time in 2 decades. Or... I pulled out the pamphlet Pastor Thompson had given me. The Women's Trade School Initiative. Called the number. Hi, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'd like to talk about starting a scholarship program. The director's name was Patricia O'Brien, 60-something, former union electrician, now running the trade school program out of a community college. How much are we talking? Patricia asked when I explained what I wanted to do. $100,000. I heard her drop something on the other end. I'm sorry, did you say $100,000? I want to create scholarships for single mothers. Full tuition, tools, everything they need to learn a trade. Ms. Mitchell, that's incredible. That could put 12 women through our year-long program. 12 women who'll learn real skills, who'll be able to support their families, who'll never have to depend on anyone again. When can you start? Today. The first scholarship recipient was Emma Rodriguez, 19 years old, single mother of a 2-year-old daughter named Sophia, working 3 minimum wage jobs just to afford food and diapers, living in her car because she couldn't make rent. She reminded me of myself 20 years ago, that same desperate determination in her eyes. You want to learn welding? I asked during her interview. Yes, ma'am, I looked into it. Welders make decent money, enough to get an apartment, to give Sophia a real home. It's hard work. I'm not afraid of hard work. It's dangerous. You'll get burned, scarred. Your hands will never look pretty again. Emma held up her hands. They were already calloused from her cleaning jobs. Don't care about pretty, ma'am. Care about survival. I hired her on the spot. I started volunteering at the trade school 3 nights a week, teaching basic welding, sharing techniques I'd learned over 20 years. The women in my class were all stories like Emma's, all fighting to build something better, all willing to work for it. Why are you helping us? Emma asked one night after class. We were cleaning up, putting away the equipment. Her first week, and she'd already gotten the hang of MIG welding. Because someone should have helped me, I said. And because work like this, honest work, it has value, real value, not the fake value that comes from appearances or connections. You talking about your son? I'd mentioned Dylan once in passing, hadn't gone into details. Yeah. What happened with him? I told her. Not everything, but enough. About the sacrifice, about Columbia, about the graduation where he didn't mention my name. Emma was quiet for a long time after I finished. My daughters, too, she finally said. Sophia, and I've been so scared that one day she'll be ashamed of me, that she'll look at her mom, the welder, and wish she had some fancy corporate mom instead. You give her everything you've got and she'll know. Your son didn't. My son forgot, but that's on him, not me. I did right by him. That's all any parent can do. Emma hugged me then, tight, the kind of hug I hadn't gotten from Dylan in years. You're a good mom, Ms. Sarah, even if he can't see it. The FBI arrested Richard Blackwell on a Tuesday morning, made the national news, helicopters following his perp walk, reporters shouting questions, Richard in handcuffs, looking terrified. Investment CEO arrested in $58 million Ponzi scheme. I watched it on my phone during lunch break at the plant. Holy shit, Linda said, looking over my shoulder. That's Dylan's guy. Yep. You think Dylan knows? He's about to. Dylan called me 3 hours later, hysterical. Mom, they arrested Richard. The FBI came to the office. They took everything. They're freezing all his accounts. My apartment lease is being terminated. The car's being repossessed. Mom, I don't know what to do. First time he'd called me Mom in months. Where are you right now? Still at the apartment, but they said I have 72 hours to vacate. What about the trust fund? Silence. Dylan, what about the trust fund? It's frozen. The FBI seized it as part of the investigation. All of it? Yeah. They said because Richard was a co-trustee, they have to examine all the transactions. Could take months to sort out. Or years. What? Federal asset forfeiture cases take years, Dylan. That money's gone. I heard him start to cry. Actual sobs. Mom, I'm screwed. I owe $67,000 in credit card debt. The creditors are already calling. Sophia broke up with me, said she can't be with someone under investigation. My job offers got rescinded. Everyone thinks I was in on Richard's scheme. Were you? What? No, I had no idea he was... You had no idea he was married either. Or that he was running a scam. You were so busy enjoying the lifestyle you never bothered to ask questions. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Dylan, but you made your choices. You chose Richard over me. You chose appearances over honesty. Now you're facing the consequences. So you're just going to let me suffer? Part of me wanted to. The petty hurt part that he'd wounded at that graduation. But I couldn't. No, I said quietly. I'm going to tell you the truth. The apartment's gone. The car's gone. The money's gone. Your fancy lifestyle? It was all built on stolen money and lies. So now you have to decide, do you want to keep chasing that fantasy, or do you want to build something real? I don't know how to build anything real. Then maybe it's time you learned. Dylan showed up at my door 4 weeks later. It was 2 a.m. I'd just gotten off a double shift, body aching, barely able to stand. Heard the knock and nearly ignored it. Opened the door to find my son standing there with one suitcase. He looked like hell. Hadn't shaved. Clothes wrinkled. Eyes hollow. Mom, we stood there in my doorway, staring at each other. All the anger, all the hurt, all the disappointment hanging in the air between us. Can I come in? I stepped aside. Dylan sat on that same couch from his childhood, the one that had held him through homework sessions and video games and movie nights, before Richard, before Columbia, before he decided I wasn't good enough. I lost everything, he said quietly. The apartment, the car, my credit score. I've got $67,000 in debt and no way to pay it. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I went to the kitchen, made him a sandwich, just peanut butter and jelly, all I had, but he ate it like it was a 5-star meal. The FBI questioned me 3 times, he continued between bites. They think I knew about the scheme. My name's in all the papers as Richard's associate. I can't get a job. No one will hire me. What about your degree? Worthless. Everyone Googles me and sees the scandal. I'm toxic. I sat down across from him, studied my son's face, saw the boy I'd raised underneath the entitled asshole he'd become. You said you knew about the loans I took out. Yeah? When did you know? He looked away. Junior year, Richard told me. Said you'd mortgaged the house, taken out personal loans. He thought it was funny. Said you were playing poor to make me feel guilty. And you didn't care. I cared. I thought you were making a choice. Like you wanted to do it. For me. I did want to do it for you, but that doesn't mean it didn't cost me everything. I know that now. Do you? Because at that graduation you couldn't even say my name. Dylan's eyes filled with tears. I was ashamed. Not of you, of me. I was pretending to be someone I wasn't, and having you there, it reminded everyone of where I really came from. And I hated that. I hated that I came from poverty and hard work instead of trust funds and country clubs. So you erased me. Yeah, and it was the worst thing I've ever done. We sat in silence. The clock on my wall ticked. Outside, a car drove past. I need help, Mom. I know I don't deserve it. I know I treated you like shit, but I'm broke and homeless and I don't know what to do. Here it was. The moment I'd been waiting for. The moment to make him hurt like he'd hurt me. How much do you need? Hope flickered in his eyes. Maybe 20,000? To pay off some of the debt? Get an apartment? I don't have 20,000. 10? Dylan, I'm $173,000 in debt. Every penny I make goes to loan payments. I'm broke. His face fell. But the trust fund is frozen by the FBI, remember? What about the money you contributed? I withdrew it before Richard got arrested. That hope came back. You have it? Mom, please. I donated it. The words hung in the air like a bomb. You what? I donated it to a trade school scholarship program for single mothers. Dylan stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You gave away my college fund? My college fund. It was my money, Dylan. I earned it. And I chose to give it to people who'll actually appreciate it. But I need it. So do they. The difference is they're willing to work for it. Dylan stood up, pacing now. So that's it? You're just going to let me drown? I'm not letting you do anything. You drowned yourself. I stood too, facing him. You want my help? I'll give you a deal. What deal? Enroll in the trade school. Learn welding. Work for 1 year. Prove you can build something with your own 2 hands instead of relying on other people's money. Do that, and I'll help you. His jaw dropped. You want me to be a welder? I want you to be honest. I have a Columbia degree. I'm not working a blue-collar job. Then you're not my son. The words came out before I could stop them. Dylan's face went white. What? The son I raised valued hard work, valued honesty, valued sacrifice. You value appearances and easy money and everything that Richard represented. So decide right now, do you want to be Dylan Mitchell, Sarah's son? Or do you want to be Dylan Blackwell, the con man's protege? This is bullshit. Then leave. We stood there, facing off. Mother and son, the chasm between us wider than ever. Fuck you, Dylan spat. The slap was instinctive, same as before. My hand connected with his cheek, hard. Watch your mouth in my house. This isn't even a house. It's a trailer. A shitty trailer where you've been stuck your whole life because you were too stupid to do better. Each word was designed to hurt, and it did, but I'd been hurt worse. Get out. Gladly. He grabbed his suitcase and stormed out. Slammed the door so hard my pictures rattled on the wall. I stood there, shaking, crying. But underneath the tears, I felt something else. Relief. I'd finally let go. The scholarship program exploded. Word got out about what we were doing. Local news picked up the story. Former welder creates opportunities for single mothers. They interviewed me and I told them the truth. I learned the hard way that success isn't about money or status. It's about dignity and honest work. The donations poured in. Not huge amounts, but enough. We went from 12 scholarships to 25, then 40. Emma Rodriguez graduated top of her class, got hired at Miller Industrial, same plant where I worked, making $28 an hour. Ms. Sarah, she said on her first day, wearing her brand new work gear. I got an apartment, 2 bedrooms. Sophia has her own room. I hugged her. I'm so proud of you. I wouldn't be here without you. Yes, you would. You've got the heart for it. I just opened the door. I paid off $40,000 of my debt. Between my welding salary and the teaching stipend from the trade school, I was making decent money for the first time in years. Got the shoulder surgery. Finally, 6 weeks of physical therapy and I could lift my arm without pain. Even started dating. Tom Crawford, the PI, asked me out for coffee. Then dinner. Then we just kept seeing each other. You're different, he said one night over takeout Chinese. Most people who've been through what you have, they're bitter. Oh, I'm bitter, I admitted. But I'm also free. My son doesn't own me anymore. You hear from him? No. You? Tom had kept tabs on Dylan, not officially, just out of curiosity. He's in a homeless shelter in Manhattan, still trying to find work, but the scandal's following him. My heart ached, but I didn't reach out. Sometimes love means letting people hit rock bottom. I saw Dylan on the news one evening. Not a news story about him. He was in the background of a segment about New York's homeless population, standing in a soup kitchen line, wearing clothes I didn't recognize. Linda was over for dinner. She saw me freeze. That him? Yeah. You okay? I don't know. We watched the rest of the segment in silence. When it ended, Linda squeezed my hand. He's got to come to you, Sarah, on your terms. What if he doesn't? Then he doesn't, and you keep living your life. Dylan showed up at the trade school on a Tuesday evening. I was teaching my intro to welding class. 12 women, all eager, all taking notes like their lives depended on it. Because they did. The key is steady hands, I was saying. You rush it, the joint fails. You take your time, stay patient. Ms. Mitchell? Patricia poked her head in. Someone's here to see you. Class isn't over for another. I think you'll want to take this. Dylan stood in the hallway, thinner, beard grown out, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that looked third hand. Hi, Mom. The women in my class were all watching through the doorway. Great, an audience for whatever this was. Dylan, what are you doing here? I came to... He swallowed hard. Is it too late to enroll? I stared at him. Enroll in what? The welding program. You said if I learned a trade, worked for a year, you'd help me. I'm ready to try. Why now? Because I've spent the last 6 months applying for jobs. Hundreds of them. And no one will hire me. Richard's scandal destroyed my reputation. My Columbia degree is worthless. His voice cracked. I'm sleeping in shelters, Mom. Eating at soup kitchens. And I realized something. What's that? You were right. Everything I built with Richard was fake. It disappeared the second reality hit. But you built something real. Something that lasted. And I want to learn how to do that. Emma stepped into the hallway. You're Dylan? Ms. Sarah's son? Dylan looked at her, confused. Yeah? She talks about you sometimes. Never with anger, just sadness. Emma crossed her arms. Your mom changed my life. Gave me a future. You know that? I'm starting to. Good, because if you're here to hurt her again, We're going to have problems." I couldn't help but smile. "Emma, it's okay." "You sure, Miss Sarah?" "Yeah, I'm sure." Emma went back to class, but not before giving Dylan a warning look. We stood in that hallway, mother and son, strangers trying to find their way back to familiar. "This is a year-long program," I said. 40 hours a week. It's hard work, dangerous work. You'll get burned, scarred. Your hands will never look the same. "I don't care about how my hands look." "You'll be starting from zero, working alongside women who've been through hell. They won't care about your Ivy League degree or your fancy background. All that matters here is whether you can do the work." "I understand. And I won't give you special treatment. You're just another student." "I don't want special treatment. I want to learn." I studied his face, looked for traces of the entitled kid who'd stood on that stage and thanked Richard. Didn't see him. Saw something different instead. Humility. Real humility. "Classes start at 7 a.m. Don't be late." Hope bloomed in his eyes. "Thank you, Mom." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've survived your first month."